Hi, my name is Paul Offit. I'm talking to you today from the Vaccine Education Center at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. It is January 28th, 2025. What I thought I would talk about today is a worrisome trend, which is that more and more parents are choosing not to vaccinate their children. The CDC recently reported in their journal, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report,